very good morning and welcome back on this Monday morning to your Feel Good Breakfast show. Once again, always thank you for joining us and sharing your morning with us. Now, it's that time that we discuss relationships. Now, picture this scenario. You found the one, but there's one problem. They live in another city or worse, in another country. Now, can you make it work through a long-distance relationship? What are the pros? What are the cons? And with us to discuss this is our resident relationship expert, Dr. Eve. And we'll also be answering your questions, taking your calls for comments on 083-913-3728. Do give us a call. A very interesting topic, Dr. Eve. How do you make a long-distance relationship work? But before we get into it, let's quickly find out what our viewers on the street had to say when we asked them, what are the pros and cons of a long-distance relationship?
The one pro would be see one another after a long time. It's like it's very romantic and it's very emotional and it's ecstatic. But I mean, the cons are separation, or like you can't even get to know one another.
All right, the pros of being in a long-distance relationship is that it gives you time to find yourself, get to be your own person, and yeah, I guess you kind of get to do the things you've always wanted to do as an individual. Cons of a long-distance relationship is you don't get to speak to the person as often as you want to, depending on the type of person you are. And it could be costly as well, having to spend longer periods of time on calls or having to visit them.
Pros, you have your own schedule, you can kind of develop yourself as a person, be independent, and then the time you spend together isn't just like mundane everyday time, but you make an effort that it's quality time. Cons, I think you have to schedule your time together, which can become a bit of a chore. You also can grow too much as an individual and then think you don't need the other person, so it's a fine balance.
Pros are, I guess, having your own space, developing as a person. The cons, you spend a lot of money. I find that there's a lot of trust issues as well. And it's nicer having the person around you.
Some very interesting viewpoints from our viewers on the street. But do remember that our lines are open, 083-913-3728. We're talking about long-distance relationships, how to make them work, pros and cons. Dr. Eve, are there actually any pros in a long-distance relationship?
Yeah, I just want to put it into some kind of historical context.
Yes.
Because today, as people, well, certainly of your generation, you think about long-distance in a different way to what people in my generation used to think about, and even still today, because from a historical context, people naturally, because of migrant labor, they had long-distance relationships. People moved into the city, they left their families behind, and they had these long-distance, and they kind of were normalized. And they didn't have technology in order to be able to keep it going. So this is almost like a very essential or very basic rubric of South African culture. We're used to living with long-distance relationships. And suddenly, because of technology, it's become kind of trendy to talk about it and to think about it. So I don't want our listeners, our viewers, just to imagine that we're only talking about modern society and long-distance relationships. There's still many people who live under those conditions where they don't have a choice, and where the person, and usually it's a man, has to go out to the mines or to go into the big cities and leave people behind. And it's difficult. Those are under very difficult circumstances. So I just wanted to put it out there that there are different forms of long-distance relationships. But let's turn to the millennials.
Yes, this day and age of dating, are there any positives that can be pulled out of being in a long-distance relationship?
I think that, as you know, because we've been doing this for a long time, we talk about the importance of independence in relationships, and we look at also the different expectations that people have of relationships today. And the idea of the joined-at-the-hip relationship, we've spoken about it, Katlego, how that isn't a healthy situation where you are doing everything together and that you have no individuation and you have no individuality. So what the pros of long-distance relationship really kind of tests you about how independent and how individualistic you can be in your life, where it gives you the freedom. And there was a study that was done, and I've spoken about it recently on media, to say that millennials are being less sexual than their counterparts of 10, 20, 30 years ago. And the reason is because we focus on work. You focus on work, you focus on a career, you focus on that almost as a priority. So the relationship becomes almost secondary. So having a long-distance relationship can actually serve your purposes at a particular age group pretty damn well.
Wow.
Because you feel like, I've got this person who I still have this amazing, intimate connection with, which is possible because of Skype and WhatsApp. So I feel like I'm contained in this thing called a relationship, but I also have the individuality to grow a career, to do sport, to do my activities that I really enjoy. So it can be very positive.
Yes, well, we'll continue our conversation in trying to narrow that distance between the idea and the reality of a long-distance relationship.
Yeah.
And do give us a call, 0839133728, as we continue our chat with Dr. Eve a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But to Leanne, I'd like to find out, how is that long-distance relationship working out between you and Idris?